If you want culture to change, you can't expect that this little group's going to do this and this little group's. It's got to come from the top. If your executive team is not on board with the changes and the people-focused approach, it's going to be a really tough journey to get the culture where you want it to be.
What does it take to scale to 7 figures and beyond and grow with purpose? Tune in for stories, strategies, and tactics from founders and business leaders who've been there and done that. Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Business Podcast. Today, I'm really excited to be sitting here with Jamie GetGood. Jamie is an expert when it comes to people. How do you hire people? How do you build a team? How do you grow a team? How do you deal with transitions within organizations? How culture, all that kind of stuff. That's pretty much Jamie's wheelhouse. And I think what I'm hoping today will be is some sort of a bit of a masterclass on how to build teams.
Yeah.
And we're gonna focus a little bit more on remote and offshoring teams. Because that's what Jamie is focusing at the moment. But we are also going to deal with a lot of other things to do with culture and other things that you need in order to grow your team. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. I wanted to kick off by saying you've had a lot of extensive experience working with in the HR space. What made you decide to focus on that? Because when I was going through your research about you, is you're trained to be an engineer.
Yes.
And then I look up and you've spent like more than 20 years.
Yes.
Dealing with people stuff. Why people, not machines?
Look,
and machine easier than people.
Look, sometimes that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And if you were to talk about engineers, and sorry, I'm going to knock the industry I was starting in. Engineers are probably not known for their people skills or their relationships, and not because they're not great people, but the focus is all about projects and technical capabilities. So, yes, that was my start in my career. I started off as an apprentice, got into a trade, was studying to do engineering, and it was such that I had what I can only call as a God moment, but I had an opportunity put in front of me where the role I was in was going to be made redundant because I had moved from being a tradesperson to training apprentices in engineering skills. And the company I was in, which was Electrolux, decided they didn't want that role or that training arm anymore. And the chief HR officer at the time said, I really love who you are and your attitude and how you deal with people. I think you'd be an amazing HR person. Have you ever thought about changing careers? So I was presented with an opportunity to get into HR, and I think what clinched it was when I looked back at my career, that was the part of my role that I loved, So he took me by his side. I had one-on-one coaching for 18 months, which you just don't get. I had the company help pay for my degree, and what was really cool was he was a very unique HR person. He wasn't just a degree qualified HR guy. He was an ex-priest. So he brought a really heavy people focus to how we manage people and situations. And I think I learned more from him than I probably learned in my career. That I think has made me an amazing HR person now.
So it wasn't something that you deliberately looked for.
No.
It's something that found you.
Yeah.
Okay. So fast forward.
Yep.
You start working there, and you end up in probably what is the role that a lot of people have come to know and appreciate you for, which is Holden.
Yes, Holden. General Motors Holden.
General Motors Holden. Walk us through what it was like, especially when they announced that Holden was leaving Australia.
Yeah.
In Adelaide.
Look, I think maybe the backstory before that is actually more important because I had already been in HR for 15 odd years or 12 years. I don't know how old I am now. But when I joined Holden, there was a real issue with culture and performance. Our employee engagement scores were terrible. We had a leadership that was very much around command and control style leadership. And I realized very early part of the reason our performance wasn't great as an organization, and we were a bottom quartile business in the world of General Motors, it was because of how we were led. And to the business's credit, they wanted to change. So the head of manufacturing at the time said, Jamie, I want to change. What do we do? And we went on this journey of completely flipping how we led. And we did a whole host of things to change culture and leadership and how we engage people. We communicate daily. We did a whole heap of things, and I can talk about that through this podcast. Yeah. Long story short, within 18 months, we went from a bottom quartile performer in General Motors to a top 10 car plant. And that was before we announced closure. So we're now a performing business. We end up having to announce closure, not because of our performance, not because of unions, which is what everyone thinks, not because of our people, but because of economic factors. Mm-hmm. So it just didn't make sense to build cars in Australia anymore. So that's a whole nother story in itself, but we made a conscious decision that we were going to take care of our people through the closure environment. So instead of giving 3 months notice, we gave 4 years notice. We built a world-class transition program to help people reskill. And I understand the direction they wanted to go post-Holden. So think about it. If automotive manufacturing is no longer in this country, where are these people going to go? There's an estimated 80 to 100,000 people impacted by us closing, because it wasn't just us, it was Ford and Toyota. So we made a conscious decision, we're going to help people. With this amazing transition approach, we ended up with almost 90% of our workforce transitioning within 12 months.
Wow.
Into new roles. And most of that was not manufacturing. We retrained and reskilled people. We created new opportunities in different industries. So really proud of that result. And it was all because we took a people-focused approach. What's more interesting is by putting our people first, even through that transition, we ended up with every metric in our business improving in that last 4 years, even in a closure environment. Attendance improved, quality of our cars improved significantly. We became the #1 car plant in the world for quality in our last 9 months of building cars in a closure environment. Workers' compensation improved, engagement improved, productivity improved. Every metric in our business improved in our last 4 years. That's what a good culture, that's what good people management does.
That's amazing. Walk me through some of the things you put in place to turn around the culture of the business. Yeah. Some of the biggest highlights, because there's a lot of people who might be listening to this and they might have the feeling of like, we're so already too entrenched, we're already too far gone. Where do we start? And maybe the culture is not performing the way it is. What are some of the things you put in place? Yeah. If you have to scale it down from obviously Holden being a very massive organization to maybe small to mid-sized companies that are looking to sort of change their culture. Yeah.
Look, since Holden, I've consulted with lots of large companies, and it's the same theory and same approach. And first and foremost, if you want culture to change, you can't expect that this little group's going to do this and this little group's. It's got to come from the top. So if your executive team is not on board with the changes and the people-focused approach, it's going to be a really tough journey to get the culture where you want it to be. So first and foremost, as a leadership team, you've got to look internally and going, how are we actually performing? And we did that. And we actually drew a line in the sand and said, if you're not wanting to join us on this people-focused journey as a leader, that's fine. We'll assist you in finding a job somewhere else. And unfortunately, there were a couple of leaders that their behaviours were such that they just could not stay with the organisation. So we did actually exit a couple of leaders. And that was really important. We had to put a line in the sand and saying, as a leadership team, we are committed to people. We're committed to changing how we lead. And then we did a host of other things. For example, in the manufacturing space, I had every leader, I wanted them to put 30 minutes a day in their calendar and block it out. And your whole purpose in that 30 minutes is talk to your people. Not about work. I want you to know their wives' names, their favorite football team, what meat pie they liked. Get to know your people. And this probably leads to my second point about how you get great culture and great outcomes, which is if you understand your people, you understand what drives them, what their values are, help them understand their why and how they make a difference to the organisation. So really simply, if you know someone loves data, but they're not in a data facing role, but you now, because you get to know your people, know that they love data, all of a sudden a project comes up and it's data focused. And you engage this particular person going, hey, I've got this new project. Can you help me with this? Because I know you love data. What's that going to do to that person?
Morale is definitely going to go up.
Absolutely. So how do you understand your people, what drives them, what their values are? Why do they get out of bed in the morning? If you know that, then you can make subtle tweaks to your leadership and get the best out of your people. You do that combined with helping them understand why their role is important in the business. It's a multiplication effect. All of a sudden, people feel valued that what I do makes a difference. All of a sudden, people go, my boss cares about me because he understands me and what I'm trying to achieve. Even to the point, if someone doesn't want to do the job they're doing today, and that's pretty common, how can you put things in place? And it might mean they leave you. How do you put things in place so they head towards their dream? Because guess what? Whilst you're doing that, they will perform better in their current role. And if they end up leaving, you hire someone that actually wants the role. And I think it's a different way to look at leadership. Sometimes we put so much focus on the 80% that don't do, or the 20% that don't do the right thing, and don't forget about the 80% that do their job every day. And I think if we flip that and give this 80% some love and attention, and guide and direct and values and why, you see a different business.
What about if the leadership team doesn't have that capacity? Is it a case of, do you start by training the leadership team? Is it a training thing for leadership team, or is it a case of bringing in external leaders, understand the people first model? Maybe I think the most important thing I would probably suggest is maybe we need to define the people first model for someone who is trying to understand what that means. And I can get what it is, but maybe it's better coming from you what you mean by people first model.
And I'm glad you asked that question, because that was one of the biggest challenges we had. And to be honest, I'm helping a couple of organizations now with that same topic. And I think what often happens in organizations is we promote the best employee. That's not necessarily the best leader. And when you promote that person, now all of a sudden they've got a leadership role, but we don't train them on how to be a leader. And so what do? They go to what they think is right. I'm going to micromanage people. I'm going to project manage them to death. I'm going to give them strong KPIs, and that's how I lead. The problem with that is you get what you manage. And you don't build relationship with people, and all of a sudden people feel like a number and are just here to hit a KPI. Whereas one of the things I do with some organizations, and we did this at Holden, was we taught our leaders how to be relational leaders. So I ran a course. I called it Being Human. I don't know if they remember it being called that, but in essence, it was a session around things like first impressions. Like, do you know that people make an impression on you in the first 10th of a second? So knowing that, how do you rock up at work every day? Now, that's a very general statement, but think about it. If you rock up to work every day and you walk past people straight to your office, all of a sudden, without even saying it psychologically, you're not available to people. Whereas if you walk in the office every day, high five or shake people's hands or smile, there are chemical reactions that happen. When you smile at someone, you release oxytocin to your brain, but also release oxytocin to their brain. All of a sudden, they feel good. If you handshake, one handshake builds more rapport than up to 4 hours of continuous interaction. So why wouldn't you do that to your staff every single day when you meet them? It's a simple tool. Why don't you talk to your people every day, or at least once a week, have a conversation? Or it doesn't have to be onerous, and you don't have to do one-on-ones every month or every day or every week. But are you having one-on-ones? Right. Get to know your people. It's actually not hard, but yes, I actually ran some training. I put in some principles about and I had to be a little more project managed at the start with our leaders. Okay, this month you will have 30 minutes a day out of your calendar to communicate. Every month you will do your one-on-ones, and I'm going to check on you. Every month I'm going to check your boards, your communication boards, to make sure that they're communicating and aligned. So I was very prescriptive in the early stages, But after a month or two, it became natural. And then all of a sudden leaders were doing it themselves. And then leaders were teaching their leaders, and then leaders were teaching their leaders. But it had to start at the top.
You know how you talked about we tend to promote the best work and not promote the best leaders? I began to find out, how do you identify leaders within the organization that you need to promote, that you can raise up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really tricky question, because in some cases, the relational leaders aren't good project managers either. So it's a really interesting, really good leaders have this healthy balance between knowing and having relationships with their team, but also managing people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Do they need to be a technical expert? Not necessarily, as long as they got people in their team that can have that technical expertise. You know, I think it's Richard Branson says, hire people better than you. So how do you identify the right people? I think first and foremost, you need to know your people. It's going to be my answer to a lot of things. But if you are going to hire purely based on technical performance, you need to make sure that you do some personality tests or psychometric tests, or at least get to know them a little more, whether they actually have the leadership capacity or capability. So I think it's another step. So before you just automatically promote, just run that through your head. Can they manage people? How do they relate to people? What would they do in a tricky situation? And again, they may still be the right person, but what training are you going to give them to help them do that? And I think that's where a lot of organizations fail. I'm not saying you can't promote technically great people, but if you are going to do that, how are you going to help them transition from being a technical expert to a people leader expert? And there is a gap that a lot of organizations miss.
And I hear what you're saying, but I also hear a business owner, and I'm sure you probably met people like that, and maybe that's where a lot of people you consult will probably start from there. They were like, I really want to do this, Jamie. I know it's the right thing to do, but I am so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I am slammed with trying to find work to feed
Yeah.
my team. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but I've got so much on my plate.
Yeah.
They know what they need to do, but they've got too much on, or they feel like they're already feeling the weight of all the other areas of the business, let alone the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I feel that every day.
Yeah.
just to make it. No, I don't think anyone's Superman. Like, especially if you're a smaller business and you're scaling, which is really important for everyone to think about. As you scale, especially as a startup, you take about 12 hats, right? Today I'm CFO. Today I'm doing marketing. Okay, I'm now going to be a people leader. And so you have all these hats, and it's really tough sometimes to go, okay, what do I focus on? And it really comes down to being deliberate and prioritizing what is important to the growth of your business. So it is a catch-22, because you can spend more time on people and then suffer on your finances or your business development. Or you can do more on the business development and so forth, but you've got no one that actually performs, and your business doesn't flourish because your customer's not happy because the people doing the work are not happy either. So you have to prioritize and find that balance between, I've got a technical component to my role, but I also know that if I don't take care of my people. So a little bit like I did at Holden, I would recommend, if it's really tough and you've got tough deadlines, force yourself to block out an hour a day, even if it's just 1 hour. If it might mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing 8, 9, 10-hour days already, you may have to either squeeze an hour out of that time frame or build another hour. But I really recommend an hour a day. If that's all you can do, throw it in and focus on people. What are my KPIs of my team? How am I engaging them? Are they even meeting their own objectives? How can I support that? How can I get rid of roadblocks? Or at a minimum, just talk to your people, and all this stuff will come out. And the problem is it's very easy as a startup or a CEO of a small business to go, but I don't have time. Well, it's prioritization.
Yeah.
You get what you put in.
Yeah, you get what you put in, because if you if you're nurturing a team and you're helping a team get the most out of it, then they'll be able to deliver the work, and the cycle the cycle continues. So what I'm understanding from you is it's instead of kind of leaving it to chance, it's having that clear, deliberate. And I like the way you've said you break it down. I'm going to spend 1 hour a day doing this, and then maybe you have a list of things that you have a list of things you do. Maybe it's your one-on-ones, maybe it's your check-ins, maybe it's your following up with projects and things like that. Having that clear, deliberate set of actions, because I think that is something every business owner can understand. Even with sales, you've got a list of phone calls you need to make, or a list of things you need to do to move your business forward. So it's just a matter of, I guess, for lack of a better word, systematizing it in your head and making it as opposed to like leaving it as something
well, if you operate via a calendar like I do, block out 1 hour a day so no one can book on it, and then stick to that. And hey, I'm preaching to myself here because I'm guilty. There are days when I skip that because I've got finance that needs to be done today, or I've got a client call, and I'm as guilty as anyone. However, I am conscious of it, and I do make an effort to try and continue that on a daily basis. And some days I'll do more than now, and other days I do less. But, you know, as long as you're deliberately building that balance between people and the business and bringing people on the journey, you know, something that I'm still learning, but I've done it well in the past, is how do you bring people up with you through that leadership? Like I traditionally was a terrible delegator. But there are often people in your business that want to learn and are willing to do some extra time because they want to learn how to be a leader. So how do you go, hey, I've got this project, I need some help. You wanted to do some leadership. Would you mind helping me with that? And maybe we can help you learn on the journey. And just by framing the words that way when you talk to them, they go, oh, I'm getting an opportunity to learn here. And they see an opportunity that will develop their career.
I actually want to dive into that part you've just mentioned about delegating and bringing people along, because I think that's the thing that a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, really struggle delegating. And is there a nut to it? Is there something that you'd because when you start a business, it's normally tend to be you by yourself. And then you have to sort of like learn to delegate and spread out what you're doing to others. What's your advice for breaking down what you do and delegating and, like I said, bringing people along?
Well, I think first and foremost, don't be so sensitive when people get it wrong. Because the reason why leaders struggle to delegate is they go, I can do it better than the person I'm at training. So it's too hard to train because they're going to make mistakes, and then I've got to fix their mistakes, and then I've spent 5 hours instead of 1. Yep, that's part of it. I'm there at the moment. I mean, I've got people in my business that I'm trying to bring on the journey, and sometimes they aren't quite where I want them to be, and it takes a lot longer. But I have to wear that because I know in the long run, when they get it, that's freed. Now all of a sudden, I've got my hour back, which I can now spend here, and here. So it's an investment in people, which will take more time initially. But if you are dedicated and stick to it and are willing to coach and train, that becomes a real investment because now they're taking on those tasks that you were doing. So you just got to accept that people are going to stuff up and get it wrong, and it's not going to be at your standard, and that's okay.
It's a cost of doing business, I guess. It is what it is.
You know, as business owners, we take risks in all sorts of areas, but often we don't with our people.
Yeah. Is there a way to mitigate risks? Is it better recruitment to make sure you're doing that? Is it expectations? What can and I understand there's an element of risk involved, and there's a level of tolerance that you have to put in place, and there's a level of investment you have to make in place for you to eventually get that dividend. What I want to understand is how do they know that, okay, I put in too much and it's time to either pull the pin, or what are some of the things they need to look out in a place to know that this person is actually worth investing in?
Look,
or these people we're
yeah,
investing in?
and I think once you know your people, so it
Yeah.
all comes back to the
It
same
comes
thing.
down to knowing
When you
people.
know your people,
Yeah.
you'll know what drives them, what capabilities they have. So get to know your people, get to know your people, get to know your people, right? Easier said than done, right? And then you've got to look at the behaviors. Like if there's someone that's always late, or if there's someone that you're always questioning what they do during the day, then maybe you got to think twice about whether that's the right person. So you have to use, I guess, some common sense in this process and go, okay, I want to give this person, they're always on time, they perform really well, they've got great KPIs. I think this person's got the capability to take on more or willing to grow. I'm going to try it with this person. I think the other part to that, and I learned this from both my wife Sybil and my previous employer Eric, and they had a line that is, and it's probably not their line, but this is where I heard it from, inspect what you expect. So when you do give people a chance, you have to have a certain standard and a KPI and a goal and a metric. There's no point just giving someone a task and walking away. And again, I'm still learning this. But if you inspect what you expect, then they know what is the standard they got to meet. They're going to inspect me based on that standard, so I have to meet this target. And you automatically give people direction and clarity as to what's expected of them. And I think that's actually a really good tool when you're bringing people on that journey.
One thing I want to tackle, so you talked about delegation. What is the best strategy you found when it comes to things like dealing with conflicts or like, for lack of a better word, every workplace has what every manager or employer affectionately refers to as a problem child.
Yep.
What's your strategy for dealing with that? Because not everything that people do is, I mean, it's probably coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
Either it's you as a company causing it, or them coming from themselves, or them just being a difficult person. What's your strategy for dealing with problem child?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, you're going to be very surprised by my answer.
Okay.
Get to know your people. No, but in all seriousness, that is part of it.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had a principle in General Motors, Holden, which was called, and this was a problem-solving technique, which is called the 5 whys. And whenever I had a people problem, I would always ask my HR team the 5 whys. Why are they behaving that way? Oh, because of this. It's okay, but why? Oh, because of, but why? You ask why 5 times, and hopefully by now you've problem solved to get to the root cause of the problem, not the problem itself. Because think about it. If your audience thinks about the worst employee you've got, right? Now imagine them in bed in the morning and their alarm clock goes off. Do you believe that employee turns off the alarm clock in the morning and goes, I'm going to be an idiot today? I don't believe people do that. I don't believe people come to work wanting to be a problem child. I believe there's circumstances that causes them to be a problem child. Now, maybe there is a cultural issue that someone's upsetting them. Maybe they're in a role that is dead boring for them and they've got more capacity. Maybe there's all these other factors. And I had, not at Holden, but at a previous company that I worked for, we had one individual that everyone would complain about. He was always niggling and gossiping and causing these problems, but he was smart. And I kept asking the 5 whys to this particular leader when they wanted to give him warnings. And I said, okay, but why is he misbehaved? Tell me, is there a root cause? And eventually they just got to the point where he's a problem. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to have a coffee with him. So I had a coffee with him. I took him out into the lunch area, had a coffee, and just chatted about life and him and what his dreams were and what did you want to do before you did this job. And then I got to the point of, how do you find your teammates? And I actually asked a lot of questions. And what I found was this particular gentleman did get bullied a little bit because he was different, but he was clearly very smart. like we're talking A student at school, probably could have done a degree of some sort, but he found himself in a manufacturing role. And he had been asking his team leader for a long time, hey, can I take on this problem-solving opportunity over here? Because I can actually add to the quality team. Everyone dismissed him because he was a problem child. So after listening to him, I realized he's intelligent, he's a little different, but no one was actually talking to him. He wanted attention. He wanted to do something more than he was doing. And an opportunity came up in this quality team and no one wanted to put him forward. But no one had applied for the role. So I said, I think we need to give this guy an opportunity. And everyone said, you're crazy. He's our problem child. Why would you reward him for that? And I'm saying, because I see past his behaviors and I see his capability and a guy that wants to do good but feels like he can't. What happened? They relented and gave him a chance. He became probably one of our best employees. All because he was intelligent and wanted to do more, and someone actually sat with him and got to the root cause of why he was a brat. He wasn't misbehaving because he wanted to be an idiot. He was misbehaving because he was bored and people didn't treat him right. So get to know your people. Ask the whys. And I've got countless stories at Holden alone and all the organizations I work with where if you dig deeper, people's behaviors are generally because of a factor, not because they just want to be stupid.
Fair enough. You almost feel like for you to manage people, you almost have to put your parent hat on, your therapist hat on.
Yeah, your two kids are fighting and one punched the other. Why? Guess what? We punished the kid that punched. I've got examples of my own brother, and you've met my brother, right? When we were kids, he would niggle me and punch me and poke me, and then one day I'd punch him back, and mum and dad tell me off. And I'm like, that is not fair. The reality was they didn't see what he was doing. And that's what we do in leadership. We punish those based on their outcomes and their behaviors and not understanding why they have those behaviors. Get to the root cause first. And if they're still a prat and an idiot, yes, by all means, discipline, do what you have to do. Because some people just are. But get to the root cause first.
Awesome. Another question I have is, how do leaders, like HR people, because I've met a lot of HR people who've actually got formal qualification in human resource, but they obviously don't have that level of insight like you have. It tends to be more like shuffling people. But I wanted to talk about more from the business leaders. How do they go about acquiring those skills of being able to be people first? Is it a case of any books you recommend, podcasts, or any resource that you do? Or is it a case of find someone like yourself who is an expert that can come in and train them and empower them?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that you can do. First and foremost, part of being a good leader is you've got to be continuously learning. So there are a couple of books I would recommend, like Multipliers by a lady by the name of Liz Wiseman. Yellow book, amazing. It will help you understand how you can multiply people and their behaviors by being good leaders, or you can demotivate them and actually get them to go the other way. Really good book. Some of the books written by Simon Sinek, right? Leaders eat first. Leaders eat last. I got it wrong. Some of those books where there's a very much a people-focused approach. They're good starting points from a leadership and a learning point of view. And then, by all means, I recommend everyone should have a mentor or a coach. Just because you're a CEO doesn't mean you shouldn't have a mentor or a coach. I think find someone that you look up to, and I've had multiple over the years and sometimes it's not a formal mentor, but it's someone that's willing to actually speak into my life, and I'll ring up saying, hey, I'm dealing with this thing. What can I ask your guidance on that? And a good person in your life will actually give you guidance. So have people in your world that can speak into you. By all means, get a good relational leadership coach or a trainer. So I've run training courses for a number of companies where it's purely I just run a 3-4 hour session on relational leadership, right? And it's simple. All the things I'm telling you here we actually give you some ideals and training on that. But it doesn't have to be me. There's plenty of people out there. But also try and find people that have got some life experience. And I don't want to be critical of the HR world, but sometimes we get dragged into a very process-driven role. And it's very easy, and I've been there, it's very easy to get stuck into the process side of HR and not get into the people side of HR because you've got so much to do. Like we said before, I've got so much to do. What do I do? Well, you've got to carve out time and focus on people.
Yeah. I want to switch gears to business for your own business for a little bit.
Yep.
How has it been like transitioning to starting your own business?
The corporate world is very different to being an entrepreneur. And I've definitely had some lessons that I've had to learn. So I found I've been too corporate at times because, I get rested on the fact that I've got all these established processes and policies and procedures. And now I'm going, I actually need to create this stuff. I think sometimes the flip side of that is I can be too focused on policy and procedure and not be creative and entrepreneurial. And there's this real balance as a CEO, especially of a startup, where you have to have this balance between process, being innovative and creative, whilst also being a manager. And I think there's elements of that. You need to carry all three hats, the technical expert, the manager, and the entrepreneurial person. And I think that's definitely a lesson I've had to learn. I'm not just a technical HR leader anymore. I have to be a manager of people. And yes, I've done that in my corporate world, but it's different when it's your own business. And I'm now managing multiple departments and not just HR. And now I've also got to be an entrepreneur. I've got to be creative about what our brand is and how we're innovating. I've got to be creative about our business development, our sales and marketing. So there's this entrepreneurial hat I've really had to learn. And in some areas I think I nail it, in other areas I don't. I've just got to keep learning. It's continuous learning.
Going back to you're working, you've had the privilege of working in so many markets. I mean, you've got a sizable business in the US and now in Australia. You've had to work within a good chunk of Asia. I think you did Philippines. What?
I've worked in Philippines, physically lived in Thailand for a while, worked in the US and Australia. And they're probably the main countries. We've dabbled in some other countries where our clients have needed support elsewhere. But yeah, US, Australia, Philippines, and obviously lived in Thailand for a while.
How was playing in those different markets shaped the way you see people and culture and organization development as far as people are concerned?
Yeah, look, great example. First and foremost, there's cultural differences between all those countries.
Yes.
And if you don't understand the cultural differences, you end up making difficult decisions or the wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a classic example. Yeah. I now run an offshore business. So I provide Filipino talent, mainly in the marketing and recruiting space, for US and Australian companies. Now, what often happens is they get embedded in these organizations and they don't understand that for offshore labor, you actually need to treat them the same as your internal labor. But what happens is they go, they're in the Philippines, they don't need all the extra training and support we give. Maybe there's a reason why they think that way, but it happens a lot. So they give their local guys, 2 weeks worth of training, and then they give the offshore team 2 days. And then they wonder why the offshore teams struggle. So there's this real balance. And again, in Philippines context, they're very much process driven too. So you might have a team in the US that can free flow and be more, flow by themselves. But in other cultures, you have to be more descriptive. If you go to a Japan, then there's very much a hierarchical approach that you need to take depending on who you're working with. So understanding different cultures and where you're working makes a big difference. And, how do you then lead to get the best out of one culture to work with another culture? And I guess that's, I think, why my business is already becoming very successful, is I've lived in both cultures, both the Philippines and the US and Australia. And I know how to maximize the potential of my Philippine workforce for American and Australian cultures. And I think that's where the successes come from our business. We've got amazing people who do amazing. In fact, we're often outperforming the local teams
Yeah.
because we invest in our people.
And I think one thing that's become very clear is back in the day when offshoring was starting to come into its own, it was all about saving cost. But now I don't think it's about saving cost anymore. It's about finding the best talent
Yeah,
wherever you can find it. And
absolutely.
saving cost becomes yet another factor that you can, because if you think about in Australia and in America, the so-called bigger markets, it's not very, you're competing, especially if you're a smaller guy, you're competing with the likes of the Googles, the Microsoft, the bigger guys, and they will come in, they'll outbid you anytime.
But what's interesting is
Yeah.
those big companies are all offshoring.
Yeah.
It's actually offshoring is growing significantly because if you're not offshoring in some of the in your industry, especially in parts of the US, we're seeing that a lot with our clients, then you're behind. Because if you're in the top 10, let's say you're a top 10 staffing firm in America, and you're the only one not offshoring, from a pure cost point of view, your competitive advantage is not there. Because let's be real, cost-wise, we're about a third of the price. In some cases, a fifth of the price of an American employee. So from a pure cost point of view, if you've got 1,000 employees, yes, you can have an American contingent, but if you've got a component of that is now offshore, you can save millions, which impacts your EBITDA, which makes you more competitive against your competitors. So offshoring, yes, partly is about cost. However, some of the talent, especially in the Philippines, like people look at the Philippines and go, oh, but it's, it's a little Asian country over there and it's small. They got 240 million people or something ridiculous.
Wow.
Like, I've probably got that number wrong,
Yeah.
but there's the size of their country is huge, which means there's a lot of amazing talent. And, I hire the best of the best. So you might struggle to get a marketer in the US, whereas I'm getting the best of the best marketer that's going to absolutely compete with your guys. So from a pure quantity and quality point of view, we absolutely smash it. And then you throw in those cultural elements. My Philippine workforce works so hard. They've got this drive and this grit to just get it done. And then on top of that, they are probably the most friendliest, kindest people in the world. So you've got this really beautiful balance of great culture, great personality, great talent, throwing cost along with that. That's why people use companies like ours for offshoring.
Has the fact that you are able to physically get there, and has that been a bigger has that been a bigger driving force?
Absolutely.
Because not only have you worked there and been there, you're actually married to a Filipino person. So you've got the whole trifecta in terms of physically understanding the culture and the fact that you can potentially even get to the ground if you need to.
No, for sure. And I have an apartment in the Philippines.
Ah, fair enough.
Right. And that's on purpose because I want to spend a proportion of my year doing everything I've just told you about leadership. I want to go and meet my people. I want to give them training and coaching and talk to them. And yes, I do that virtually and remotely, and you can do it virtually and remotely. But there's something about that physical connection that I think you still need. Fully remote workforces are great, but there's still this physical piece that I think is important. So I make sure that a few months of the year I'm going to be in the Philippines. I'm going to train. I'm going to spend time. We're going to break bread. We're going to have a coffee and a wine together. And we're going to get to know each other. And because of my time in the Philippines and living there, I know the culture. I know the little things to make them improve in how they work. And I'm still learning that too. My wife is Filipino. She knows it far better than me. But between us, we can actually create amazing teams. And whereas if you're an offshore organization that hasn't had that exposure or experience and you're just hiring people in the Philippines, there are some subtle differences that you just won't know. I'll give you an example. I've been interviewing people this week in the Philippines. And just a simple question about, where do you live? Oh, I live in Batangas. Oh, Batangas. Have you been to this place? And they're like, oh, you know where I live? Absolutely. that alone, all of a sudden they go, oh, you know me. Whereas if I don't know the location or don't know anything about the Philippines, all of a sudden I'm just an employer. So there's subtle little things like that make a difference.
So is that becomes a big difference between using a managed resourcing? Because I think that's what you're doing, as opposed to me going out to, is it, what's the name of the website? Online PH.
Yep. And just get freelancers.
And just get freelancers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously there is a cost to having someone like yourself deal with that, but I guess in a way it almost mitigates itself from all the other stuff that you've got to do. It's like any recruitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, there are a lot of amazing people in the freelance world. I don't want to argue that because I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
However, there's this element of leadership and quality assurance and, structure that we will bring that probably differentiates from a freelancer. We have consistent management. We will align people with a standard that's going to be far greater than what a freelancer might hold themselves to. And you can get people online and you can pay a cheap fee, but 9 times out of 10, are you really getting the quality or the backup of an agency or someone that's going to take care of them? I mean, I have people that will work for organizations that I meet with every single week. So they're my people. I'm invested in them. So I want to make sure their standards at the level of the clients that I'm working with. Whereas, again, if you just hire someone online, you don't know their beliefs, their values. You don't know if they're really working for the time that you suggest. There's all these factors that come in.
How do you assess for cultural fit to make sure that the people that you bring into a company are able to fit within the culture of the company, especially considering the fact that we're dealing, like say, with different cultures, different time zones? There's got to be some sort of cultural fits either way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do you assess that?
I think first and foremost, when you're going through that recruitment process, it's about assessing and asking the right questions for a start. I mean, everyone interviews. You can have a very formal interview process, and how would you react in this scenario, and what would you do in this scenario, and everyone does that. We all do it. But try and go deeper. Try and ask them, so what did you do on the weekend? Or, did you get involved in charity events? Or do you just ask different questions and try and get them out of their shell so it's not less about an interview. Try and draw it out. Now, depending on the role, sometimes we'll use psychometric tests, depending on the level of the role and what our client wants. So there are other things you can do to assess, okay, can they just do the job? Ask cultural aligned questions. Relational aligned questions. And I think it's very easy to just be like a recruitment agency and go, what's your availability? Tell me about your role that you've done, right? The standard questions, that's great. But where are the relationship questions? How do you get to know the person and get a feel for who they are as a person?
Yeah, and I guess the part that I'm getting that you've emphasized is not to treat them as some overseas offshore staff.
Yep.
Applying the same level of treatment you treat, because you would go out of your way when you're recruiting locally, someone who's going to come to your office, you do all those things anyway. Why not do them for someone who is on another continent, on a different culture? Like, why not take the effort there? I remember one of the companies we used to work for, we had some really good overseas staff. And the one thing we had to, like as leaders, because I was assist with that, the one thing the CEO and the leaders we had to always emphasize is like they are team members, they are staff.
Yep.
They're not some overseas people, overseas freelancers. Yep. They're our staff. You treat them that way. You think of them that way. You think of them that way. And if you think about them that way, they will be that way.
Yeah.
And because I remember one time I think one person made a mistake on the other end, and they started, and one of the person said, "Oh, it's all those people," and it was like, and we had to turn around, and it's like, how many times has she made a mistake?
Yeah.
And he made a mistake, and she made a mistake. You sit next to them, so if someone makes a mistake, just go through the process of like, it's not like someone is on the other end, so that you can almost expect someone to fail, kind of thing.
Look, treat them as you would anyone else in your business.
Exactly.
The location is just a location.
Location is just a location.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I touched on it before.
Yeah.
If you build culture and relationship and everything else like you would a local person,
Yeah.
they're going to respond just like a local person. And in fact, I've got an example. I know a client at the moment, or a company, they're actually not my current client, who has an onshore team and an offshore team pretty much similar size. The offshore team, and this is a recruitment company, does more phone calls, has more talk time, has better submits, has better relationships, yet get treated worse than the onshore team. And now they're starting to have people that are resigning, and they're wondering why. Because they'll treat the local guy really well and so forth, and invest in training and huge bonuses. These guys get bonuses, but that much. Completely different. Now, I know there's going to be differences because of location and economics and all that. I'm not suggesting we should change that. However, just put a little bit of thought to if you invest the same amount of attention that you give your local team to an offshore, and they're already outperforming your local guys, what could they do? You imagine the exponential growth you could have. And it's not that they're better people. It's not that they necessarily have different skills to the onshore team, but because of the circumstances of life, they often will work more and they will drive because it means more to them. Losing a role in the Philippines means a lot more than maybe losing a role in America, just because of opportunity.
Let's get to a bit of logistical stuff. What's your approach to dealing with things like onboarding and getting people started, especially with time zones?
Yep.
And like obviously culture and time zones. What's your approach there?
Look, I think again, if you have a week's onboarding for your local team, you have a week's onboarding for the onshore team, and the offshore team in particular, and whether it's offshore or it's remote or however you're doing it, they're going to be working the same hours as you anyway.
Okay.
So if I've got a US client, my offshore team works US hours. So
okay. So you try and match.
So there's no issue from an onboarding.
Okay.
They can join online the same onboarding process.
I thought it was a case of like the offshore team, because the next question I was going to ask you is, how do you manage work across different time zones? So it's a case of negotiating with the person on the, obviously putting the expectations on the other end.
Yeah.
For person working in Philippines, that this is a job that's part of their conditions. It might affect your night sleep, but then these are the hours.
Well, the Philippines is probably, apart from maybe India and a couple others, is probably one of the offshore capitals of the world. So a lot of people in the Philippines are willing to work US hours if you're a US company. If you're an Australian company, they're willing to work Australian hours. So the hours part is not an issue. Having people willing to work those hours is not a problem at all. They're used to it as a country. So that's not even in a consideration. Now, we do have some clients that go, hey, yes, I want people working our shift, but we also, if we're hiring nurses, for example, nurses work 24 hours a day. So we want some employees outside of normal hours who can talk to nurses that are coming off shift. So we do have people on multiple shifts depending on the client's need. But generally, we're aligned with whatever hours the client works.
How do you maintain a sense of community? Some practical strategies to maintain a sense of community for people across different time zones, across different locations?
So all those principles I talked about before about getting to know people doesn't change whether they're in another location or not. So you still need to invest time in your people every day, talking to people. And again, I'm still guilty at times I don't. I just want to make everyone feel good because I'm guilty at times. But you still need to do that. So you still need to do one-on-ones. You still need to do daily catch-ups and chats. You also still need to do fun activities. So, almost every month I'm, buying, which is like KFC, but Jollibee in the Philippines for my team.
Okay.
Right? We'll do a Jollibee lunch and we'll have an hour where we all get online together and we'll play online games, or we'll have dress ups or we'll do fun events as a whole business. And we've had some incredible events where everyone's had so much fun, and we'll do that on a regular basis. So just, okay, we can't do a local barbecue potentially because everyone's remote, but we can do a lot of things. Now, when I go to the Philippines, we do get together. So we have co-working days, and we'll have dinners, and we'll have get-togethers. And I do the face-to-face when I'm there. So I think even if you're a fully remote workforce, you need those moments where you have face-to-face.
How do you... I'm thinking about an organization that has never done this offshoring before, and they're probably a little bit apprehensive in terms of how to get started. Is there an element of preparation they need to do internally to make sure they're able to bring in people and manage them properly? Is there some changes they need to make? What is a thought? What is some of the things, if I want to sort of start to bring in a team, let's say maybe I'm a bigger company, I want to try and bring in a whole bunch of people in. If it's one, maybe it's a lot more easy, but people that want to bring in a bigger team and put together a team, what's your strategy in terms of preparing internally and coping with a new way of working?
Yeah. Look, as you've gathered from my background at Holden and everything else, I've got some experience in change management.
Yes. Yes.
So, depending on the scenario, if you're bringing in one person and they're like a support function, you probably don't need to do so much. Yeah. Now, I will assign, in essence, an account manager for your offshore person. So there will always be us managing them on a daily basis as well. So you don't have to worry too much. If there's an issue, we help get involved and deal with that. But I still think you should embed them in your team. If you've got team meetings and this person's part of the team, involve them in your team meetings. Just because they're in another location doesn't matter. If you're now going, okay, well now I want to bring a whole team in and change the way I structure my business because I want to have a team of Filipinos, great. We do that a lot. However, that's when I can give you some guidance on change management. So what is the messaging you're going to give to the workforce? Because they're now going to see Filipinos in the business. What's in it for me is, the line that I would always go, people are okay with change if they understand what's in it for them. And if all of a sudden this helps strengthen the business and gives security for you and maybe gives opportunities for you to take a leadership role because you can help with some of these team and you thrash out the benefits of that. And for some people, they won't see those benefits. But there's still a change management approach of communication and education that you still need to go through. Now, that's not difficult. I don't want people think that it's a hard process. It's not. I can guide through that process as well because we've done it a lot. But for the most part, most people have actually gone, oh, great, I've got extra help. Bring them in and engage the person. Yeah. You just got to treat them like an onshore person. If you've got an online meeting, invite them if they're part of the team.
How do you manage, how I was talking about earlier, let's say you're about to bring a whole bunch of people in and you've already got existing workforce that is not used to having that. Now, some people might feel insecure, feel like someone is coming to their job, we're going to be praised. And maybe that's not your intention. Maybe that's your intention. I don't know what it is. So you might get a bit of apprehension between the two different teams while people understand. What's your recommendation for managing that transition from within your internal team that you've already got on location to make sure that they embrace the new team members, for lack of a better word, as opposed to being apprehensive and feel insecure? Because that's something that I've noticed. That's something that I've seen within places I've worked for.
Yeah. Well, I think the economic environment has created a little bit of that too, because people are worried about, are there going to be redundancies? Am I going to lose my job? And all of a sudden there's a Filipino that rocks up, or an offshore person is not necessarily Filipino all the time. And that can create some of those tensions. But again, I think just like you would with any change management process, what is your communication? How are you educating people? I have worked with many clients who said, I want a bit of that tension. Because, I actually had a conversation with someone a few weeks ago, and it shocked me actually. And he said, bring it on. Because to be honest, I'm not convinced my local guys are actually doing the job role they should be doing. I don't believe they're making the calls they should be doing. I don't believe they're doing this and that. So if your guys come in and completely perform, it's going to put pressure on them. And I want a bit of that. So we still ran a change management process, and we still, educate people about we're going down this path. This strengthens our business, which means have a better EBITDA. This is not about, jeopardizing roles. This is about strengthening us. So going forward, we can give you job security. So having the right messaging makes a difference. However, there was that element of competitiveness that they wanted.
Yeah.
So there is. So yes, you've got to really be considerate to the messaging you give your current workforce. If you're going, we're in trouble, I'm bringing in Filipinos, and you're all on notice, you've got to perform, maybe not the best approach. I'd rethink that messaging.
Keep that close to your chest.
Yeah.
If that's your intention.
Yeah, and for the most part, it's not the CEO's intention. They actually want to improve their business and make it stronger because they do value their people. So 90% of the time, the offshore team's not there to replace you. They're actually there to strengthen you and supplement you. And in a lot of cases, on the offshore marketing side, for example, the onshore marketing teams often don't have the bandwidth or the budget to do graphic design or video content or websites because they're just so busy on day-to-day marketing. So they bring companies like us in not to take away roles, but to supplement the skill sets that they can't get to. And I think it's just all comes down to that messaging. And the marketing teams we support in the US and Australia love our teams. They're going, bring us more, because all of a sudden I've got a graphic designer now that can help me get my job done. I've now got a video editor that can help me create videos for what I need to do. So we're actually building and strengthening teams more than the messaging of we're replacing.
Next question I have is AI.
Yeah.
Lots of it taking a lot of the jobs that most people will have traditionally outsourced. How do you see both of these either playing side by side, or because we're talking about, now we're talking about this year it's all going to be about AI agents, and there's even talk about AI employees, and there's even talk about potentially having a human resource division focused on looking after AI employees. How do you see the happy coexistence or maybe transition of the workforce in the light of AI? Because like I said, obviously there are some careers that are going to be decimated, but then there's a place whereby I feel that it's going to really, really make a big difference. Having dealt with people and also seeing both sides, how do you see the two of them working side by side or coexisting, or what are some of the pitfalls? What should businesses really be preparing for the onslaught of AI, I guess?
Well, look, if you're running a business, you have to start really considering embracing AI.
Yeah.
Those that are not willing to go down that path will be left behind. And I hate to say that. Now, does that mean it impacts your workforce so everyone's gone? No, it doesn't. There will always be human elements. There will always be things that you need to consider. But from a HR point of view, we need to really think through this. I spoke at the HR Tech conference in Sydney a few months ago. And I actually, as part of my introduction to my presentation, I filmed myself doing a welcome to the conference video, but I didn't show my English version. I used AI to do a version in Filipino. And then I go, oh, wrong video. So then I played the next video and it was me speaking in Italian, and it was all AI. But it looked like me, it sounded like me, my lips moved in line with the Italian words. And I'm going, sorry, I've played the wrong one again. And then I played my English version. And it was really an eye-opener for everyone in the room who hasn't played with AI to go, wow, we're at that point that I don't even know what's real anymore. Now that throws some challenges from a HR point of view. We got to really dig into, what does AI mean? How does that impact our business and our people? Do I really know if my person's actually working or just sitting with ChatGPT? Or you can embrace those tools and get more performance out of your workforce. So I use AI every day. My team uses AI every day. However, in the marketing space in particular, yes, everyone's going, yes, you can use this AI marketing tool, but guess what? You're actually hurting yourself if you're using AI in marketing. Now, don't get me wrong, we use it, we play with it, but Google now, they want human-based content. So you will lower your SEO ratings if your whole website's designed out of AI, and you won't be up high on the agenda. So you have to be really careful how much AI you use in the marketing space, because guess what? People are now getting fed up with, is it real? Did you really write that? They want real human content. So we are getting to a point where AI will grow, but because consumers want human content, if you're just using AI tools, you are actually going to be filtered out with some of the online tools. So yes, AI will play a part. We have to embrace it and use it to strengthen, but not to the detriment where you're not producing human-based content.
Yeah.
That's on the marketing side. Then you go into all these other areas of life. Again, it can really enhance. I know recruitment companies that are playing with AI right now, and they're not getting the same results as a human-based recruiter.
Okay.
Now, I've seen some that are doing amazing jobs, but it's that healthy balance. At the end of the day, recruiting an employee is all about relationship and bringing people on the journey in line with your culture. I don't think we're ever going to quite replace the recruiter in that space. That's a couple of examples.
Yeah. What are some ethical considerations that businesses should consider when it comes to offshoring? Because,
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people want to do the right thing, but sometimes you also want to consider one thing I always find is sometimes I find some people promoting like a very low cost, and
Yep.
and as much as there's a very big difference in the economies between
Yep.
here and some of these countries, at the end of the day, you think, if you want to pay someone $2, is that really fair? Is it not?
Yeah.
But what are some of the ethical considerations that you
consider it.
suggest?
And I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
There are a lot of organizations out there that will play I'm going to get the lowest cost person,
Yeah.
and I'm going to put a huge margin on it, and it's still very cheap. And what you don't realize is they're still getting a good margin, which means they're really paying cheap. I don't want to play that game. I'm all about quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
So in my organization, I will hire the best of the best, but I will pay them above market rates. So for obviously that country, because the economics, is what it is. But I don't automatically go and find the cheapest labor. I actually want to pay someone more than what the market says. And that's one, because I have a heart for my workforce, first and foremost. And because I know if I take care of my people, then they're going to take care of our business and our customers.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be the cheapest offshore company. And, I'll say that openly. But I can tell you I'm going to get the best quality and the most engaged, and we're going to give you better outcomes. And this has happened multiple times now where we've come into an organization that's already using offshore labor from another organization, and we've worked side by side and completely outperformed. And the company's been willing to pay more for my service because they're getting better outcomes. And so there's that component. So I don't want to play that unethical game of just getting the cheapest labor. And then you've got people really every month to month, struggling for finances. You can play that game in some of the offshoring world. So, and then you've got, I believe I like to give back to the communities our employees are in. So we've done it for the last few years. We'll go into communities of our employees and we'll run events. So, last year we ran an event which was a medical mission. We went into a little barangay, which is a little suburb in the Philippines, and we had, Chinese medicine practitioners came in, and we gave some health support to people in that area, and we really helped a number of people. And prior to that, we went into a school and gave out educational, books and pencils, and we bought them lunch, and so we're trying to do charity events within our employees' areas, because guess what? If I help my employee thrive and then I help their community thrive, I've got an engaged employee. So I think and I guess that's part of the ethical dilemma, that I don't want to just give to our employee, I want to give back to the community.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden I'm doing the right thing by that world and that community, which means my employees are going to be better for the people that they serve.
Do you tend to sort of look for people within a specific geographical space? Are you require them to go to a specific office when you handle a team, or?
Yeah, so I'm fully 100% remote.
Perfect.
So I do have requirements that I need to meet. So for example, internet connection speeds have to be right. We're fully remote. They have to have backups. So that's part of that recruitment process. If you don't have that, you don't even get through the next stage. And that's just because I can't afford to have an Australian US client not getting the service because of internet. So that does naturally probably restrict where I recruit from. I'm obviously recruiting from the main cities. At the moment, my main cities are Manila and Bacolod. I've got family in both. So that is nice, because then it creates, communities that I know well. But yes, so they're probably the two main areas we hire from. Again, there's some amazing people in the regional areas, but that normally comes with other concerns of internet and so forth.
Yeah. So for someone that is considering building a team, and it doesn't have to be remote, it could be just building a team, because you've obviously worked in HR for a long time. What are some of the challenges or the pitfalls that you see that you would suggest for them to sort of look out for when it comes to building and growing your teams, especially as businesses start to scale? Yeah.
Well,
because okay, just to rephrase, the question is, the first few employees might not be very hard because it's pretty much getting people that are like you. But when you start to build a growth team, then obviously that becomes a very different ball game. What's your recommendation for businesses that are at that growth phase in terms of building teams?
Yeah, look, first and foremost, if you're doing offshore teams in particular, you need to have the right leadership. So, I'm really fortunate that I've lived and breathed in the Philippines. I've got a place there. I know the culture. So there's that element where I've got that benefit. I also have amazing leaders in the Philippines. So I don't have to completely rely on me being in the Philippines, because I've got great leaders there. So you need the right leadership that's going to coach, guide, follow process, build process, lead and manage. And I think, again, if you're just hiring a group of remote people in the Philippines and you don't have that leadership, then yes, you are fraught with danger, like you would with any country. You can't tell me, there's not lazy people in Australia. If you give someone a remote option and you don't manage them, guess what? People will take that. It's the same as every country. So those concerns we have are the same in most countries, but you've got to lead. You've got to regularly meet and contribute. You've got to have the right training and the right leadership. You've got to meet occasionally. I wish I could meet more than I do. And the problem is the reverse of that, actually. Since COVID has now relinquished, we've now got many organizations in the Philippines that are going, okay, no more remote. We're bringing everyone back in. And they're finding people are resigning in droves. Because in the Philippines, going from where you live to a BGC or a Quezon City or one of the main city areas, Makati, you might be in traffic for 3-4 hours, one way. So you're now going 7-8 hours traffic a day. People don't want to do that anymore. They've had a taste of remote. So you have to find that healthy balance between hybrids or how do I get the right mix of people as well.
Looking at the future of work and knowing your background, what do you feel are going to be the biggest opportunities, whether from companies or people?
Yeah, so the World Health Organization, I think it was, in fact, I think it's another organization, but we'll stick with that for now. There was a research study done, I think, 18 months ago where they talked about the future skills required of people. And what was interesting is, yes, everyone needs to come on the journey of the technical skills and need to understand, this remote world and the computer side, the digital side of this new world we're in. But what was more important in this research was the soft skills. There needs to be more education for everyone around soft skills. How do you communicate? There's an amazing book actually, or a lady you can look up and listen to called Erica Darwan. And she wrote a book called Digital Body Language, another great book to read. Because we're in a different world. Gone are the days where you can look at someone and read their body language going, there's something not right with John today. I can see, I can feel it because the way he looked at me and his body language, you don't get that now. So how do we give people soft skills in digital body language? How do we look out for different signs? How do people write in an email? Right? If you do something in all caps, guess what? Looks like you're yelling at them. But we don't teach that either, do we? Yes, maybe people go, oh, that's natural. You shouldn't understand that. But no, a lot of people don't understand that. So there's this digital body language, this soft skills piece that we need to start training people on. More and more people are going to have to understand AI. In some cases, fast forward 5 years, maybe we need to have a better understanding of coding, and it may get more technical. We don't know. So at the moment, I think focus on soft skills, focus on digital body language, understand technology. If you've never used a computer, you probably need to, because it's hard to get a job now without that knowledge. So there is a technical component, but definitely soft skills is one of the greatest needs. Digital literacy is what they call it.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the biggest transition we help people, just similar to what you had today. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you do have the answer. Transitioning people in the age of AI.
Yeah.
Because I am a big fan of AI. I use AI every day. I'm probably one of those people who goes to organizations and helps them implement AI solutions. And yes, it's good for efficiency, it's good for profit, but I also worry about how we transition teams. How do we get, especially people that are feeling insecure? Do you have any insights in terms of how we help people transition in the age of AI?
Well, I think when you look at human behavior, I don't think it's changed too much.
Yeah.
Like if I go back to my days at Holden, and if you, or manufacturing in general, when robots first came in, what did we do? We had to train everyone how to operate the robot. What's the new procedures that you have to do? This is what your new role looks like in line with the robots. This is no different to that. Just like you invested in people in training, you have to do the same with AI. The reality is if we don't train people with AI, they'll either use it behind your back and they'll be using it to do their job, or you embrace it and go, let's train you properly in how to use this. Let's give you the digital literacy you need. In our company, we're going to focus on this tool, and then you promote so you've got a consistent approach. Because people are going to use it. I guarantee you, if you're not focused on AI in your business now, people are still using it. So how do you bring people on that journey together going, yep, we're embracing AI, but we're going to focus on this tool, and we're going to train you in how to do that. And as a company, we would like a consistent approach in this. So it's no different to any other technology that's come over the years. You have to train, you need to build a change management process, you need to engage people, and then encourage them to use it the right way.
As we start to conclude, with your business right now, what are some of the things you're really excited about pursuing, especially in line with some of the way how you help customers? Any exciting innovation, any exciting things that you're really looking to bring to market?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think obviously in our space, and if I look at the digital marketing side of the business, it's changing a lot with AI. So we're trying to really work through how do we utilize technology to really enhance what we already do. So there's that component. Secondly, we've got technology that we're working on at the moment, which will, look at how do we make our clients' life easier when it comes to managing our people and offshore labor. We're also, there are a lot of freelance and Upwork type models out there, but, So if you want to get 2 hours worth of graphic design done, you can do that. The problem with that is they're not consistent with your brand. You've got to train every time and get that, and the quality can vary depending on who you get on any particular day, significantly. If you've tried it, I've had experiences where you get really, really bad quality one day and then the next day you get great. So it's really consistent. So we're actually running a similar model to like a Upwork.com, but it's covered under our agency. So now you're getting quality assured, you're getting a certain standard. If you continue to use us, we'll make sure we meet those standards on a regular basis. So we've got a model that we're playing with at the moment, which will allow people to get those small chunks of hourly rates, and maybe you buy 10 hours and use that over a period of time. But now you've got it at a marketing agency standard, not a freelance standard, which is huge.
One thing I've actually noticed consistently about the people that I've interviewed in this podcast so far, they're all working in some sort of technology of some sort. So is it a case of the future of consulting becomes a case of I've got my consulting bit here where I'm giving paying, doing time for money or paying some advice and some sort of technology to sort of augment. Do you feel like that's going to be the future of consulting?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's going to be mandatory for everyone. I think a lot of great organizations will get by without technology and still provide a great service. For me, I want to, and we're still a young company. But I want to start thinking about how do we give our clients better service, and fortunately or unfortunately, technology is a big part of that. So we want to be innovative, and we want to be the company that you come to go, okay, they're already pushing these boundaries. So that's important to me. Secondly, in my previous life, I worked in a merger and acquisition business. And what I learned from that was, companies that have technology have far better outcomes in years to come when you end up wanting to sell your organization. There's a much higher multiple if you've got inbuilt technology that's worthwhile. So there is a benefit of having technology at a future exit date. But again, it's not mandatory. I know many organizations that don't have technology that do an amazing job.
Yeah, it's a very big factor. I think everyone's working on it. I would say even for us as a service-based business, we're working on technology to, it could be something that helps us exit further, but it's also automating a lot of the internal processes so we can be more efficient, especially with AI. As we conclude, what are some of your passions and interests out of work? I mean, how do you manage to stay balanced? And you've got family, you've got kids, you've got a business. How do you manage to sort of stay balanced? Maybe balance not the right word. Maybe it's harmony.
Because it's not always balanced.
It's not always balanced. Sometimes this wins, sometimes the other wins. What are some hacks or some tips that you and your wife, because you're both like go people. What are some hacks that you've tried out this year that have kind of helped you get the most out of yourselves personally and within your business and family and stuff?
Look, I think first and foremost, you have to be aligned as a family and as a couple. So, if your family understands that, hey, there's certain needs to run a business, they're great. Family will come on the journey with you. Sybil and I in particular, Sybil's my wife, and I've had to learn this process. She's been the driver because she's passionate about it, but you know what? I've learned from her and it's been incredible. So we now at the start of every year do a goal setting / intentions day where we'll talk through what happened last year, what did we want to do, what didn't we do, we set goals for the following year, we check in every week, every month, how we're going with our own personal goals as our family goals or our business goals. We meet, and we weren't doing this, but now we're meeting every week and going through our budget and looking at how do we manage our budget as a family. So there's this open communication piece that I think you need as a family and as a couple. You still need to have fun. You still need to build, your time as a family and your date nights, and you've still got to have moments together, both as a couple, as a family. That's super important. You still need friends. So we invest time, even in the little time we have. We're always probably once a week meeting someone for dinner or coffee or something, because friends are important for me and for both of us. Having church and an opportunity to show our faith
Yes.
and look at where our priorities are is actually focused up and not around. By doing that, that grounds us in every part of our life. And I think having that as our core in most areas of our life actually gives us a balance even when we're not balanced. So, and I think we've had amazing miracles, and we've had direction that we've been given because of our faith that I don't think I would have had without my faith.
Absolutely.
So there is this core beautiful balance of our relationship, our goals and objectives, our family and friends, having the right community of people, having a faith, all of that together, building time for yourself, do sport, do things that excite you or drive you. So, we're now playing badminton, right? And I want to play golf now, and Sybil was going to have time with her friends, and you've got to build all that in together. All of that makes this beautiful harmony of how we make it work, even though we're busy all the time. But by doing all those other bits, even though we're busy, it gives us balance in our own way. And I think there's just something beautiful about that. You've just got to make sure that you invest in your family, your personal life, but also God and work all in one.
Absolutely. Are you working together in this business?
No. So Sybil works with an American organization. She's the country head of this American group for the Philippines. And so this business is, whilst I'll call her my advisor, because she's got a lot of experience. So she'll guide me and coach me in areas, and we'll talk about it. And I bounce ideas off her. But so she does help me out, but more on a guidance point of view.
Okay. But you've run the same business in the past.
Yeah. So prior to starting this business, we worked with an organization that was a venture capital. So I got involved in mergers and acquisitions, but also we ran offshore marketing, offshore recruiting for a number of years. So been doing this for a while, and now I'm doing it under my own banner.
That's exciting. I'm really grateful for your time today. Thank you so much for your insight. What is the best way for people to follow you, connect with you, learn from you, work with you?
Absolutely. Look, I'm an open book. So if people connect with me on LinkedIn,
yes,
Jamie GetGood, there's not many Jamie GetGoods online.
It's a really cool name.
So now the only challenge with that is LinkedIn now have limits on how many connections you can have. So you can't have more than 30,000 connections. So I am always at that limit. So I'm having to always shuffle those that are close to me and not. So if people can't get me on LinkedIn, by all means, Jamie at thepeopleavenue.com. I'm always willing to talk. I'm always willing to build a network. And, if I can offer free guidance or my thoughts, I do. I probably spend too much time helping people. But I think there's something about reciprocity. If I can help people in my world and with nothing, expecting nothing in return, I think it's a really good cultural thing I can do, and it's really good about doing my bit for my communities. And at the end of the day, I'm sure it comes back in different ways.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.